But Scientologists take extreme measures to avoid external scrutiny. Measures, it seems, that come at the direction of their leader, the mysterious David Miscavige, who is at the centre of the Church's greatest mystery of all, the whereabouts of his wife Shelley.
In 2007, Shelly Miscavige appeared at her father's funeral. She slipped away from her handler for just one moment. She whispered something desperate to her sister before being escorted away. That was the last time anyone outside Scientology saw her alive. For 18 years, she's been hidden at a secret compound in the mountains. Former members say she's trapped behind razor wire and cameras. In 2025, new evidence emerged about what's really happening to her. The truth is darker than anyone imagined. Michelle Diane Barnett came into the world on January 18, 1961 in Dallas, and from the start, her life moved in a direction most kids never dreamed of. Her mother, Flo Barnett, was already deep inside Scientology by the late 1950s, and treated Hubbard's teachings like they mattered more than school or birthdays or anything outside the church. Her father, Barney, struggled to keep steady work, so the church felt like the one place that gave the family structure. While Michelle was still in primary school, her parents left her and her sister inside Scientology facilities in California. Staff members, not family, handled their days. She grew up with e-meters on tables, books about invisible thetans on shelves, and adults telling her that any fear she felt came from mistakes she had made in some other life. By the time she was 10, she already felt the weight of ideas that made childhood feel small and strange. As the early 1970s arrived, she found herself pulled even closer to the heart of the church. She had been born in Dallas in January 1961, and she was only about 11 when her mother's devotion earned the family entry to more advanced events in Los Angeles. Those gatherings were run by Sea Org staff who watched families closely. Children who listened well, worked hard, or showed sharp focus were quietly marked for messenger and cadet programs. These programs did not feel like summer camps. They were built on strict drills and talk of billion-year service promises. Former insiders said Michelle's small frame and serious eyes made her stand out, especially with a mother who already followed every Hubbard rule. Soon she was guided into a youth training path that lived on discipline, repetition, and fast obedience to any order sent down from Hubbard's personal aides. Her first close look at the church's inner world came when she watched an auditing session on her own mother. Flo sat holding 2 metal cans, while the e-meter needle jumped each time an emotion stirred. The auditor followed Hubbard's lists, word by word. These sessions could last hours as they searched for hidden guilt or pain. Families like the Barnetts believed these marathons kept them safe from outside hands, like psychiatrists or social workers. They were taught that only Scientology methods could handle the storms inside a home. For a child like Michelle, watching that scene made the church feel like the only place that truly understood anything. But not everyone in her family stayed loyal. As Michelle moved deeper into church life, some of her relatives pulled away. Flo later left the official church and joined an independent Scientology group. That break turned her into someone the church viewed as disloyal. People around David and Shelley later said the connection to Flo felt repugnant to them. During the same years, other families were split in similar ways. Relatives who questioned the church were called suppressive persons and treated like enemies. Investigators who spent years studying these feuds wrote about custody fights, secret phone calls, and parents trying to pull kids back from an organization that did not want to let go. Even school became part of the church. Michelle learned through Hubbard's study tech, a method that pushed kids to clear every word with a dictionary and repeat materials until they could answer in exact patterns. Children raised under this method often sounded strangely formal, almost rehearsed. and teachers found them hard to reach. They were sure the church's rules were always right. For Michelle, it blurred everything. Homework, religion, and training all mixed together until each day felt like another drill. By her early teens in the mid-1970s, she was being sent to major Scientology centers as part of youth training. One of those places was the Flagland base in Clearwater, Florida. It sat inside properties the church had quietly bought before the public even knew. Former members said that during those trips, young cadets heard adult staff talk in low voices about Snow White programs, Hubbard's plan to clean government files on Scientology. Court and FBI records later showed that between about 1973 and 1977, this turned into Operation Snow White, the biggest infiltration of United States agencies ever carried out by a church. For a girl barely out of childhood, hearing adults whisper about code names and secret missions made it easy to believe that covert work and hidden battles were normal parts of protecting a spiritual cause. Around the same time, when she was about 12, Michelle joined the Sea Org. Her parents allowed her to enter the Commodore's messenger organization in roughly 1973 or 1974. Sea Org members signed a billion-year contract and worked about 100 hours a week in exchange for room, basic food, and a small allowance. Critics and lawsuits later said this was child labor, especially for kids as young as 10 or 12 who should have been in school. Former member Mike Rinder said he met her on the Apollo in 1973 when she was 12 and far younger than most teens there. From middle school age, she lived among older youth who believed they were serving Hubbard for lifetimes to come. The messenger group she entered had started only a few years earlier. It began with 4 girls between 11 and 13 who acted as Hubbard's personal messengers. By age 12, she joined them. The Apollo cruised the Mediterranean and Caribbean as Hubbard controlled operations from the ship. Governments had labeled Scientology a cult, so the ship kept them ahead of legal trouble. Messengers like Michelle carried his handwritten notes, his verbal commands, and his personal tasks. They walked one step behind him and echoed his tone when he was angry. They carried his ashtray, lit his cigarettes, and moved through a ship that worked almost like a floating command center. Life in the Sea Org was built on long hours. Some described 100-hour work weeks. That meant days that stretched past 14 hours and sometimes close to 16 or 18. Teenagers fell into a pattern where exhaustion looked like loyalty. Kids who should have been in school were put on cleaning teams, construction jobs, or administrative posts. The threat of punishment hung over everything. If you questioned an order, you risked being labeled a problem. The messenger group worked right at the center of Hubbard's world. They passed locked cabinets full of operating thetan materials and secret course packs that most members took years to reach. So at 12, she was living inside rooms meant for only the most trusted adults. Discipline shaped friendships, too. Former Sea Org kids talked about ethics conditions that controlled every step. Being late to muster or failing to meet a target could bring extra cleaning or drills that felt endless. On the Apollo, young messengers moved together all day and bonded tightly because they were cut off from parents and lived in a world built on rules they could not break. David Miscavige joined the Sea Org as a teenager in the 1970s. He entered the messenger group, rose fast, and by the early 1980s, both he and Shelley held senior positions. They married in 1982 after years of shared pressures, late nights, and the feeling that only another messenger understood how heavy the work could be. Training came early and never stopped. Very young Sea Org members were taught to audit adults using the E-meter. It was a strange wait for children who were not even old enough to drive. David Miscavige was already auditing adults by about age 12 in the early 1970s. Kids around Shelley were told they carried responsibility for someone else's spiritual progress. By the time she and David married in 1982, colleagues described her as quiet but capable. She served as his assistant and helped manage well-known Scientologists, including Tom Cruise, through the mid-1980s. All the demands placed on her as a teenage Sea Org member shaped her into someone the church trusted with its most private and powerful figures. She was only 14 when most kids were just figuring out who they were, yet her days already belonged to a world far from anything normal. Life on the Apollo moved like a tide that never rested. She woke up in a naval-style uniform, signed a billion-year contract before she even understood what forever meant, and followed L. Ron Hubbard from room to room with a notebook in her hands. She joined the Messenger organization at about 12, and by 1975 she was part of a tiny circle of teens who carried every word Hubbard spoke as if it were a command carved in stone. They tracked his schedule. They delivered his handwritten notes. They repeated his orders exactly as they heard them. Then, the ship Life suddenly vanished. Hubbard ordered the Sea Org to leave the Apollo and move to the new Flag Land Base in Clearwater. She was still 14 when she stepped off a wandering ship and into a fortified religious base built on pressure, control, and fear. Only 2 years later, she learned what fear really looked like. Scientology launched Operation Snow White in 1974, and by July 8, 1977, the FBI raided Scientology offices in Washington and Los Angeles. She was 16 and already seasoned in the Sea Org world. When top leaders close to Hubbard were arrested for spying on the government, the message spread fast inside her small circle. The outside world was not a rumor anymore. It was an enemy. Those raids led to criminal cases and a total shakeup of the command structure. She stayed untouched on paper, but she lived inside an atmosphere that taught her that survival meant silence, obedience, and never asking questions. Her own mother became part of that fear. Flo Barnett had once been a loyal Scientologist, but she left the church, took copies of confidential materials, and later joined David Mayo's breakaway group. That made her a suppressive person in the eyes of Scientology. It also made her a source of shame for her daughter. Then, on September 8, 1985, Flo was found dead at 52 with 4 rifle wounds and cuts on both wrists. Authorities ruled it a suicide. The church stayed silent, and Shelley learned that her distance from her mother had turned into a mystery that people inside and outside the movement whispered about for years. Her messenger work kept her close to secrets most adults never saw. Messengers did more than deliver notes. They managed Hubbard's communication pipeline. They relayed programs, security concerns, and orders to officers across the world, then checked whether those orders were followed. She watched sensitive papers move from Hubbard's pen into Scientology's machinery day after day. Later, the Church of Spiritual Technology began engraving those same writings onto metal plates designed to survive nuclear war. The public still does not know the code names or the full contents of the documents she handled, but she grew up watching information flow through the core of a system that kept almost everything hidden. By 16, she was living at the Flag Land Base in Clearwater. She even appeared in a 1977 Clearwater High School yearbook, though her real authority had nothing to do with classes. Her power came from Sea Org rank and proximity to Hubbard. Around the same time, another 16-year-old arrived. His name was David Miscavige. Both teams rose through the CMO and absorbed Hubbard's ethics system that labeled dissenters as dangerous and justified cutting off anyone tied to splinter groups like Flo's. When they married in December 1982, she was 21 and he was 22. By then, she had spent almost a decade inside the system. She became his assistant, sat in on high-level meetings, and helped manage relations with famous Scientologists like Tom Cruise while keeping a quiet grip on real power. Their connection went back to their teenage years. She was born in Dallas on 18th of January, 1961. She entered the Sea Org at about 12. He was born on 30th of April 1960 in Pennsylvania. He joined the Sea Org at 16 in 1976 and moved into the CMO soon after. Both worked under Hubbard by 1977. Former members say they grew close during late 70s training, long before their 1982 wedding, though the exact first meeting is still debated. Their bond deepened inside a setting where punishment was common and mercy was rare. The RPF shaped part of that bond. It was Scientology's internal punishment system. Months or years of hard labor, sleep deprivation, extreme isolation, and only a few dollars a week. Former executives say both David and Shelley enforced these rules in the 80s and 90s. Staff could be ordered into 12-hour workdays and filthy conditions while being told it was for their own good. This atmosphere of fear and control wrapped the couple together in a way that made them inseparable in the eyes of those below them. After their marriage, she began seeing him through a lens encouraged by Scientology beliefs. Multiple reports say she saw David as the reincarnation of Simón Bolívar and herself as Manuela Sáenz, Bolívar's historical partner. These ideas came from auditing sessions where vivid images from other eras were treated as literal memories. That past life story became part of their private mythology. It made him feel destined to rule and placed her in a role where loyalty had no limits. The FBI raids of 1977 set off a scramble. 11 Guardian's Office officials, including Hubbard's wife Mary Sue, were later convicted. Young messengers were used to move cash and documents across the country. Some ex-members speak of high-speed drives between Los Angeles storage sites, moving Hubbard's manuscripts before investigators could find them. The stories do not clearly place Shelley and David as joint leaders of a dramatic 1979 mission, but the panic around document handling was real everywhere inside the inner ranks. Her work also tied her to David's spiritual climb. Scientology's operating thetan levels, including OT3, involve confronting secret extraterrestrial incidents millions of years old. David was considered a star auditor by his teams. Shelley was his assistant and handled sensitive liaison work. She had access to confidential files, schedules, and communications. Some critics claim she oversaw parts of his highest-level auditing. Those claims lack solid documentation, but they match the trust and closeness they shared during those years. Their marriage pushed her into new authority. When they married in December 1982, she received a title created just for her, Co-B Assistant. It placed her as the person who managed his schedule, relayed his orders, and controlled communications with key representatives. She was 21, with access to discussions that older executives never touched. In 1983, she watched her husband purge the old leadership. Dozens of managers were dragged into security checking marathons and forced to write confessions about loyalty and intention. Many were removed or pushed into punishment programs that lasted months. Some later formed splinter groups like David Mayo's AAC. It showed how wide the split had grown between the old network and the new regime. Even before the facility at Gold Base became known as the Hole, those same trailers were used for confinement and discipline in the 80s. People were locked in, fed restricted diets, forced to write long lists of moral failures, and pressured through constant interrogations. Punishment was not an exception. It was a tool. Through the mid-80s, Scientology fought a brutal war with the IRS while battling splinter groups in court. Dozens of lawsuits were filed on both sides. New corporations like RTC and the Church of Spiritual Technology were created to protect Hubbard's assets. Shelley stayed beside David through all of it, handling sensitive logistics and communication. Hubbard died on January 24, 1986, at age 74. After his death, Miscavige pushed aside Pat and Annie Brooker and took full control. By 1987, he was chairman of the board of RTC. Former insiders say Shelley helped enforce this transition by running briefings, relaying directives, and supporting security checks that pressured staff into accepting David as Hubbard's successor. By the early 90s, she became the point person for Tom Cruise. Cruise had been pushed deeper into Scientology during the 80s, but in the 90s, the church focused on turning him into their most loyal symbol. He spent long hours in auditing, recounting his life while reports reached David and sometimes Shelley. Staff documented his behavior at home and on set. Knowledge reports flowed upward. Shelley became the quiet link between Cruise and the leadership, helping shape the image of the church's biggest celebrity. Then came Penelope Cruz in 2001. When Cruz began dating her, Shelley guided Cruz through Scientology's early steps, including the purification rundown, hours in a hot sauna each day, and heavy vitamin doses. Some people stayed on it for weeks. Cruz finished the program, but kept her own beliefs. That frustrated the leadership. They wanted someone entirely shaped inside their system. That experience taught Shelley what the church expected from a perfect partner for its most valuable member. Nicole Kidman brought a different challenge. Her father was a psychologist, and Scientology treated that as a threat. Through her 11-year marriage to Cruise, staff wrote quiet reports about the couple. After the divorce in 2001, the church redefined Kidman as a suppressive person. Bella and Connor, their adopted children, were exposed to courses that framed their mother as spiritually dangerous. Former insiders say interrogations and ethics interviews spread through those connected to Kidman. By around 2007, she admitted the children no longer called her mom. In 2004, Miscavige awarded Cruz the Freedom Medal of Valor. Around that time, the church launched the Golden Age of Knowledge. Cruz became the face of it. He appeared in high-energy videos and stood on stage beside Miscavige. Film executives visited Scientology centers on Cruz's invitation. Staff steered every moment they saw. Reporters faced strict rules. Sea Org members kept notes on anyone who asked the wrong questions. This mix of control and charm helped soften negative coverage for years. After Penelope Cruz, insiders say Shelley helped with a secret search for a new partner for Cruz. Around 100 young Scientologist actresses were brought in under the cover of auditions and questioned about their views on Cruz. Nazanin Bonayati came first. When that ended, attention turned to Katie Holmes. She became engaged within weeks of going public with Cruz and married him in 2006. Their daughter Suri was born on 18 April 2006. The church promoted silent birth at the time, urging families to keep the delivery room quiet to avoid supposed spiritual trauma. Former members say Holmes was closely watched. Any frustration, any negative comment could trigger new counseling sessions and new reports. In 2003, the air at Int Base felt heavy, almost like everyone could sense something coming before it arrived. Shelly Miscavige walked through the place with a kind of quiet control, and people lowered their eyes as she passed. Soon, they learned why. She began a reorganization that swept through the base like a storm. 40 senior executives were demoted in a single push. One day, they were wearing pressed shirts and giving orders. The next, they were pulling weeds, trimming bushes, and doing yard work under the hot Hemet sun. These were not simple job changes. They were punishments for what the church called crimes against ethics. Shelley ran daily audits on them, asking questions that went deeper than work. She wanted to know their thoughts, their doubts, their mistakes. all in front of others. Many broke down. Some were placed in isolation for days. Others spent weeks doing hard physical labor while being watched. A culture of fear spread through the base, and even high-level executives whispered among themselves, afraid they could be next. In those months, people saw Shelley as David Miscavige's most loyal enforcer. The following year, things grew darker. In 2004, the hole expanded from a few rooms into a prison-like block that at one point held almost 100 members. People said Shelley helped shape this new version of the hole. She oversaw the system, blindfolding prisoners and marching them into rooms where a panel waited for their confessions. These were no quiet talks. They were loud, tense sessions where people shouted, cried, and begged. They had to admit failures and then swear loyalty to David Miscavige. Many said they felt trapped in a place where time did not move. Confessions were filmed. Meetings were recorded. Every promise was documented for later use. Inside the base, the hole became a symbol of fear and a reminder that even longtime members could lose everything overnight. Then, in 2005, something more personal happened. Shelley's own sister, Clarice, questioned the church's financial moves. It was a small moment that exploded into something much bigger. Shelley drafted a declare order that cut Clarice off completely. This single document labeled her as suppressive and ended their bond. That same order went out to every branch, blocking any Scientologist from speaking to her. People who saw Shelley sign it described a cold calm on her face, like she had accepted the cost. Clarice's disconnection became one of the most painful examples of how deep the church's control could reach, even inside a family. Around this time, pressure inside Shelley's own marriage reached a breaking point. David Miscavige had been spending more time away, and rumors inside the base grew louder. In 2005, Shelley drove almost 100 miles to confront him. Witnesses said she pleaded with him to understand her and listen to her. But his face stayed firm. He rejected the moment, and something inside their marriage cracked. People later said that from that day on, she was no longer the same inside the organization. The consequences came fast. In September 2005, she was quietly removed from power and sent to the Twin Peaks compound in the San Bernardino Mountains. Former members said the place felt like a prison camp in the middle of trees and silence. It was isolated, guarded, and run with strict rules. She was assigned a handler and lost her direct connection to church operations. From that moment forward, she faded from view. The woman who once stood beside David at major events was now tucked away behind razor wire in a mountain facility. A year later, in 2006, even Tom Cruise's wedding showed how far she had fallen. She was not allowed to attend. Leah Remini noticed her absence and asked questions. That question became an internal report. The report became a spark. And that spark drew eyes from everywhere, bringing more attention to Shelley's sudden disappearance. The next year brought the last time anyone outside the church truly saw her. In 2007, she appeared at her father's funeral in San Pedro Harbor. People watched as she arrived with a handler by her side. There was a moment when she slipped away long enough to whisper to her sister Suzette. She said she was in deep trouble and could not help anyone anymore. Then she returned to her escort and left. Those words became a final clue before she vanished from public life entirely. Around the same time, Shelley stayed involved in operations that showed her old sharpness. In 2007, she coordinated a raid on defectors from the Advanced Ability Center. Private investigators moved at night and seized materials worth more than $2 million. They took everything they believed belonged to the church: computers, audio recordings, even furniture. Former AAC members said the raid felt like a military strike. All the seized items were returned to Int Base and documented carefully. That year strengthened her image as someone who would go to great lengths to protect the church's teachings. By 2008, her influence reached a point where her word could freeze entire regions of Scientology. She vetoed 15 expansion projects after calling them entheta. Directors waited for approvals that never came. Some questioned her decisions. Those who did were fired, demoted, or sent for retraining. People started calling her the Enforcer Queen, a name that captured the fear she inspired. Yet only 2 years later, her world shrank again. By 2010, she was deep inside the Twin Peaks compound, doing vault maintenance and other menial tasks. Her auditing sessions were reported directly to David. Her access to files disappeared. Former members described the place as quiet and tightly controlled, with cameras watching and guards patrolling. The woman who once shaped the direction of the entire church now spent her days in hard routine work, far from any decision-making. Her last confirmed public appearance remained that moment in 2007, at her father's funeral. Since then, the mystery grew. The church insisted she was busy with special projects, but no photos appeared, no recordings, no statements. Silence stayed in place for years. In 2013, Leah Remini filed a missing persons report with the LAPD. The case closed within hours. Police said they had met with Shelley and that she was fine, but they released no proof. Remini pushed for records. Nothing came out. Critics said the church might have influenced the process. The debate kept growing. Then, in 2025, a new voice spoke up. Shelly Miscavige Hill said she had credible information that Shelley was still alive at Twin Peaks. She said Shelley was isolated, watched, and kept under strict control. Her words revived the mystery and stirred questions that had never truly gone away. Former members painted a picture of the site itself. A 500-acre compound covered with inward-facing razor wire. Armed guards walking the grounds. Cameras that tracked every movement. Motion detectors hidden in the trees. They described underground bunkers built to survive disasters and luxury homes placed behind locked gates. According to these accounts, Shelley lived inside this sealed world, unable to leave, watched around the clock.